Hi, it is me, Pinky Orange Girl again, and for today I decided to make a video talking about only one gaming franchise instead of my usual format where I talk about three different things that are part of a certain category. The last time I have talked about only one franchise was when I made my history with Splatoon video, and I really want you to remember this detail for the end of the video. But we're getting sidetracked here, so when I first discovered Parappa the Rapper, I thought it was a simple written game of the past without any type of depth in it. But I was proven wrong. This series is pretty goofy and wacky, but also kinda heartwarming. There are dozens of reviews discussing the franchise, but I stand to want to discuss why is the titular character pretty well written. In my previous video about well-written mascots, I said that Parappa deserves a video of his own because I want to bring a new light to the franchise and its main character by getting a full depth analysis video from me, because talking briefly about it with other gaming franchises doesn't do him enough justice. Before the video begins, make sure to like and subscribe for gaming content, and maybe I will make new Parappa related videos, who knows. But anyways, let's just right into it. So, I'm gonna discuss how he was characterized in both the first and the final installment of the series, without Jamalami, since he isn't the protagonist in that drug trip simulator, and I also want to discuss his character in neither of his two anime series. With that out of the way, let's get into the story of the first game. So Parappa and his gang go to Chunky Burger to order their daily meals, while all Parappa asks for is water. After which the two ugly ass bullies appear who are totally drawn by a high toddler, go to harass Sunny, the flower girl who is the main interest to Parappa, and then Jo-Chin appears. Jo-Chin very confidently distracts the bullies and quote-unquote saves Sunny, and this is the first time when we see Parappa feeling jealousy towards him. Parappa isn't as confident, strong, tall, or even as muscular as Joe, and that's why he admires his capabilities, mainly because it seems like Sunny is probably gonna be taken, so in fear of losing her, he wants to learn how to kick some ass, just so he can defeat her better than Joe. Parappa, wondering how he's gonna do that, he says his catchphrase.
Yeah, I know, I gotta believe!
He says it every time he starts of low self-esteem and feels defeated, just so he can get back on his feet to accomplish anything he wants to do. On the surface, it doesn't seem like a big deal, and it probably isn't, but trust me, this catchphrase is going to improve your life. Whenever you find stuck of not knowing what to do in an occurring situation, believe in yourself that you can find a solution to every problem of yours. I gotta believe definitely improved my life, and I believe it will change yours too. Now let's return back to the story, because the story in the first game is very episodic, so I'm going to explain the story a lot more in here. After he took karate lessons from the legendary Chop Chop Master Onion, he then sees a super stretch and fat, you know what I mean, car driven by none other than Jo-Chin himself. He shows off what an amazing car he has that no one else seems to own one, which is kinda ridiculous to be even proud of owning it, but whatever. Even Parappa is amazed by it, and when everyone gets in the Joe dick, that's a terrible joke, Parappa and PJ, his best friend, are in the back where the dirty ass pipes are located. But then Parappa unlocks a new dream of getting a license to take Sunny to a lot of places. He does for a couple seconds, then he believes he can do it, and eventually gets one. Before we continue with the story, I just wanna say how weirdly relatable this story is. It's honestly the most relatable in the franchise, mainly because of two things. The first one being how episodic it is, showing how every day we have different struggles and how we get new dreams and goals. Real life isn't a consistent narrative with conflict, climax, and resolution. Hence why even if the game is wacky and incredibly cartoonish, it still manages to be kinda down to earth following this type of narrative. And the second reason is because Parappa isn't a perfect character. He makes mistakes, he has obstacles that he needs to overcome, he feels intimidated and also fantasizes about having a better life. For the longest time I have wondered why do I find myself so attached to this cartoon dog who raps more than most people I have encountered in real life. Well, I think I now know why. He's a very optimistic dog who makes mistakes and takes responsibility for them in order to better himself and to prove that he's worthy for Sunny. Unpopular opinion, but I think there isn't a fictional character quite like him in terms of how he inspired so many people around the world that loved his games, even to this day. He's probably the most inspiring character to me, and that's why he became my comfort character. Let's get the story out of the way so I can discuss more things about his character. After passing the driving test, he steals his dad's car from playing too much GTA, just because he can't afford a car himself, but really wants to take his friends on a ride. I love how Parappa is portrayed to be very impatient and how desperate he is to show off and prove to his gang that even if he doesn't have what Jojin does, he can still be confident and be cool just like him. After a fantasy sequence, he crashes his dad's car and he's terrified and not knowing what to do. Look at him, oh poor boy. I mean, at least he and his friends survived, but he doesn't really appreciate the fact that because he knows what kind of trouble he's gonna have. But then he believes that he can pay for the repairs, and he does it with one of the best characters in the franchise. I am of course talking about Prince Please Follow. He somehow gets enough money to buy his own car that is sentient, I think. I don't know how much time has passed, but let's just assume it's the next day. Him, PJ and Katie are playing rock paper scissors to decide what kind of role will they have at Sunny's birthday party, which it will be the next day. Parappa was tasked to get her a cake, but Jojin shows up again. This time he tries not only to impress Sunny with this massive cake, but also probably to get a Guinness World Record. Anyways, he explains in detail what each floor of the cake represents, and he's acting like he's gonna get married to her. I would like to point out how Parappa had to listen to Jojin ramble instead of just leaving, because Parappa is just too wholesome to leave even his biggest rival alone. But then again, he should have done that because... There's a reason why I called his car Joe Dick earlier. Quick side note, Parappa's voice in here sounds kinda cute, just listen yourself.
I'm in trouble now. What should I do? I'm almost out of money.
Anyways, he again believes he can find a new cake for her, but instead of buying her another one, he went the extra mile to bake it for her, which shows how much he cares about her and wants to do his best. Sure, this can be seen as a bad thing because he's sipping over a flower, but that's another flaw that he has. Whenever I have a crush on someone, I also am trying to catch their attention without coming off like I'm desperate for them. Even though in reality I am. He definitely helped me to self-reflect on myself and stop behaving like this, and I wish he could do the same. So anyways, after he baked her a seafood cake, he eats too much of it at the birthday party, and I think he's the one to eat the most of it because his friends, including Sunny, were too afraid of getting diarrhea, while Parappa thinks it's delicious. He then has a private time with her, and in the middle of that, he actually gets diarrhea.
No.
Despite of the goofy ass sound effects, I feel like I also got diarrhea, and I don't know why. When he holds it in, Sunny mistakes it for him looking manly. You can't make this shit up. This pun was actually unintentional. Lol. So he drives his new car with Sunny to the nearest gas station, not only to use the restroom, but to also fill his car tank. He also says an actual funny toilet joke.
My car tank is empty, but mine is full. I mean, I'm full of gas and not the car. No, the car needs gas, but
After he takes a shit, returns to her in the car. However, she doesn't seem too happy about it.
He's the same old Parappa again. Oh well.
And that's why I don't ship them anymore, and for another reason that I'll get into later. Anyways, he then gets an invitation that is from Sunny. Oh, he's so adorable. He calls her probably to ask her out, which she accepts, and they both go out to Club Fun, where Parappa has his first concert. It isn't really confirmed to be his first time on stage, but that's how I see it. Now that we got the story out of the way, let's make a quick list of Parappa's pros and cons. His pros are he's optimistic, outgoing, hardworking, adorable, and most importantly, he believes in himself. And his cons are he basically wants to change himself just so he can smooch Sunny, he sips too much, always gets into trouble, he's kinda impatient, and he has unrealistic expectations. Despite all his flaws, he still manages to be a likable character who we can easily root for and relate to. We all struggle with low self-esteem for many different reasons, but this doesn't mean we have to stop doing the stuff that inspires us the most. Before I became interested in Parappa when I was a huge K-pop fan, I struggled in the exact same way that Parappa did in both the first and the final game. I set myself high standards and I thought I was gonna be successful only when I'm perfect perfect at dancing, singing, rapping, hence why I couldn't believe in myself. Thanks to Parappa, now I am more motivated than ever to do the things I enjoy doing, no matter if I'm good or bad at them. I'm going to talk about his connection with rapping a bit later on, but now let's talk about how he was portrayed in Parappa the Rapper 2, my favorite game in the series. The narrative here is a lot different than the one in the first game. While the first game was very episodic, the second game has a consistent story that is a lot more bizarre than the one in the first. Not as bizarre as some Jamalamis, but I digress. Despite of this drastic shift in storytelling, it still manages to flesh out Parappa very well, if not better than in the original game. So that's why, while talking about the story, I'll explain in detail, like Jochin, about Parappa's development and relationship with other characters. So let's do it! So the game opens up with a nightmare Parappa had about a monster from a movie shooting noodles at everybody in the theater. And why it was shooting noodles exactly? Well, it's because we learned that he won a lifetime supply of noodles, and because of how much he has to eat of them, he can't even stand their sight. When he went over to Sunny's house with PJ, she served them noodle dishes. And I would like to point out how prior to that scene, Parappa said he would do anything for her, but he doesn't want to eat the noodles she made for him, which is pretty realistic for something like this to happen. This is called expectations versus reality, dear comfort character of mine. It's also a pretty reasonable reaction for him to have, considering his feelings towards noodles. But anyways, he is for the first time incapable of believing in himself, because no matter how big his belief is, this doesn't change the fact that he has to eat noodles for the rest of his life, allegedly. And then this happens.
Parappa, I didn't know you were such a baby.
And this is the second reason why I don't ship them. Instead of Sunny asking Parappa what's wrong or is everything alright like a normal quote-unquote human being, she downright insults him. No, she wasn't sarcastic because she would have laughed it off, but she looked dead serious before and after she said it, so I don't want any of you in the comments to say otherwise. I know this scene exists to start the main conflict and Parappa's insecurities, but I wish it was handled better. Maybe have Parappa and Sunny argue a little bit in a comedic way, and then Sunny calls him a baby, not because she actually meant it, but out of frustration, and then have her feeling awful for saying it and trying to explain it to Parappa, but out of fear for things potentially getting worse, he runs away. It will establish Parappa's newfound insecurity, but also would have made Sunny a more likable character. But then again, it's the only issue I have with the story, so I can live with it. Anyways, Parappa and PJ have a small talk of what Sunny thought about the situation, and they also talk about noodles. If I were Parappa, I would have dubbed Sunny, not giving her a second chance at all. I can see why so many people have an issue with this story, including me to some extent, but the story is about Parappa trying to grow up, so I assume he's probably Gen Z, my generation, and teenagers, including me, aren't the best when it comes to dating. We think our crush is automatically a perfect person, hence why we can't choose the right person for us, and oftentimes we don't acknowledge their mistakes. We don't understand romance on the same level as older generations do, so I think it definitely gives Parappa even more depth than before, and it ties in with his struggles of growing up even more. It's actually thanks to Parappa when I realized the person I had a crush on for almost 2 whole school years wasn't actually for me. So yeah, thanks Parappa. But let's get back to noodles. After going to a restaurant Beer Burger, what happened to Chunky Burger? Rest in peace. Parappa and PJ order burgers which turn into noodle burgers, and Parappa is so pissed off that he makes the counter that's taller than him bounce. It's just funny to me. This guy, who we later find out his name is Kunu Noodles, says that there aren't any classic, more like normal, burgers. Then 2 employees call him a baby while wishing the original owner of the store was still alive, which causes Parappa to get reminded of what Sunny told him earlier this day, and then he has a fantasy of him getting rejected and playing with babies. And I would love to point out how his first imagination in this game is negative, reflecting how much this hurt him, but also gives him motivation to prove that he isn't childish. The first thing he does is cook burgers with Beard Burger Master, who used to be my favorite teacher in this game, but not anymore. I still love him though. And if you're wondering, did he say his beloved catchphrase? Well, yes, he did.
Yeah, I know. I gotta believe.
So I'm going to skip through the story because I want to explain only the parts about Parappa's character. Let's get into the romantic karate. That is a show strictly for adults. Rated E for everyone. Parappa is very enthusiastic about it, which causes him imagining watching an adult show with his friends and Joe the Big Dick Chin. What the fuck is wrong with me? Everybody's laughing at a bug dying and coming back to life only to then die again. I would also laugh at this, not gonna lie, while Parappa is standing there in confusion. And this is also portrayed as a negative imagination because he thinks if he doesn't understand something adult related, then he's a child. Because nobody thought to tell him that he doesn't need to understand everything adults do. He can still be an adult. I know his struggles aren't really subtly portrayed, but they aren't downright explained either. It's like the game treats the player the same way Parappa probably gets treated by most people around him. It's neither too much like a child to downright explain to him the most basic stuff, nor they treat him like a wise old man who needs special treatment. And why do I brought this up at all? Well, the amount of sexual references in this E-rated game makes me believe that the devs wanted the player, no matter their age, to feel connected to Parappa and his struggles. You know, it's like they wanted you to put yourself into his shoes and make you feel like you are also entering into this new world, or as Chop Chop Master Onion said, the world of adults, which this scene illustrates my point perfectly. Probably the kids who played this game were just as fascinated by the romantic karate as Parappa, if not more. Like me. Also, this game knows how to use plot exposition effectively without overdoing it and getting annoying eventually. I wish Side Order could do the same. Plot exposition, the video game. Let's get back on track. Parappa makes the cutest face ever, and then he says, "I gotta believe," referring to him wanting to understand adults better. He also gets into it. A little bit too much into it, but I'll talk about it once I'm done with the story. After which, he and PJ take a break, and then accidentally, they're getting shrugged from Papa Parappa, yes, that's his name, invention, and then a lot of other people who are entering Parappa's house do get shrunk, including Milkian without Masan though. And this is when they meet the chill yet egotistical character, Guru Ant. I love him mainly because he's the only stage where I managed to get into cool mode 3 times, and never in bad nor awful mode. So yeah, may he be respected. While Guru Ant is spreading his belief what's the meaning of big, Parappa imagines Sunny not noticing him because he's tiny as fuck. Yet another problem comes in Parappa's way that he needs to solve, like in the first game. Except in the first game, his fantasies were positive mostly, but in Parappa 2, every fantasy except his last one before stage 6 is negative. And I really like this approach because even if this is a positive game series mostly made for kids, it isn't afraid of showing the main character feeling negative emotions and imagining the worst things that could happen. This gives Parappa so much depth, it's not funny, and it applies his catchphrase even more. His catchphrase is used as a contrast to what Parappa felt prior to saying it. I know when I talked about the first game, I said he isn't a perfect character, but now because of his more general struggle that we can all relate to, now he's even more imperfect, which makes him an even more endearing character. Enough side talking, let's get back to the main event. Guru Ant said that you can't follow the rules but must come up with your own groove. And this will be important for later. I'm referring to you rather than he because it wasn't clear enough he was talking to Parappa. If there was a line of him saying "you orange doggo" or something, it would have definitely been a lot more obvious. For us it's already obvious, but to the characters in universe, it kinda isn't. Imagine if he was talking to the pizza delivery guy and Parappa falsely thought Guru Ant was talking to him. It would have been hilarious. After the banger song, everybody returns to their normal size, except for Guru Ant, who is bigger than usual. I'll talk about the both good and cool endings to this stage after I get the story out of the way. So yeah, so the man that Parappa is joins the army not only to stop the Noodle Syndicate, but to prove that he's a grown-ass man who doesn't need to be spoon-fed like a toddler. After he sees the sign about turning real man, he has a fantasy where he's about to pilot the rocket to space, even though he was already in space in stage 3, so I guess his fantasy came true, kinda. But this fantasy is important because Sunny is there cheering for him instead of insulting him or ignoring him like in the previous three delusions. He wants Sunny's encouragement so he can believe in himself even more, because she's an important person to him. And I forgot to mention, but in the first game, when you failed the last stage, she's the only one who supported him by saying next time he will do better. And also remember in the second game's introduction when Parappa says,
The only thing that gets me going is the lovely Sunny Funny and her sweet smile.
the reason why he goes through the things that he does is to become the best version of himself and to try to keep his relationship with her as long as possible. Dogs in real life are like this to the people around them who take care of them too, including my cousin's dog. Oh, look at her. That's why I'm a dog person. So, yeah. So it makes sense for Parappa to be the sim that he is. Dogs love getting positive attention from the people they are closest to, including Parappa, despite him being more humanoid. Back to the noodles tales. We introduced to my favorite female instructor in the Parappa franchise. No kidding. Sister Museisha. And why sister? Well, because her sister is Instructor Mussolini from the first game. She also tells Parappa, and maybe PJ, who knows, that he or they has to come up with his own groove, encouraging him to be his own person in the process. She isn't gonna be the last teacher to say so keep that in mind. Parappa trains in the army, passes the obstacle course, I'm not sure about PJ, and is given his first mission, a hostage situation in a hair salon, of all places. But before we go into the hair salon, I want to discuss a minor detail that nobody really pays attention to, that it tells us more about Parappa's character.
I hate being stiff.
So what does this stupidly short scene is telling us, you're probably asking yourself? Well, General Potter, who is Sunny's father, called both Parappa and PJ men. But instead of Parappa jumping from joy after hearing that, he instead is saying that he hates being stiff. You could argue that it's kinda out of character for Parappa to react, but I'll argue that he doesn't like giving much reaction after getting a compliment. You'll see that again later. Or maybe he knows he didn't say it genuinely and said it just to be nice. But then after Parappa says the I hate being stiff line, he then smiles in a very specific way, meaning that he took it as a compliment, but tries so hard to not seem egotistical. I don't know, you be the judge, but either way, it's still in character for Parappa to react. Now we can go to the hair salon, sorry for holding you back. When PJ and Parappa entered the salon, they found out everybody has an afro hairstyle, even the entire male can. Even though it doesn't make sense for my son to have one because he's usually bald, but whatever. When Lamy begs for help, Parappa, out of concern, is left speechless, and PJ is trying to make the situation seem not that bad by saying,
The afro looks good on you.
Don't say that!
and yeah, I agree with him, Lamy looks stunning with an afro. Another fantasy sequence later, we get properly introduced to my favorite instructor in this game, and one of my favorites in this entire franchise, Hairdresser Octopus aka Takuyama. I love him so much that I drew a sick fan art of him. But anyways, he also says follow your own groove to create a better hairstyle than him, and yeah. But Parappa responds by saying,
But I've never cut nobody's hair before.
I love how he doesn't immediately jump into action after hearing Takuyama and is actually terrified to do it. Not only because he's never cut anybody's hair before, but since everybody is literally paper thin and scissors are like knives to them, so he's scared of potentially cutting somebody's head or another part of their body. This is such a realistic reaction for a 2D dog to have. I pointed it out because in Umjama Lamy wasn't this terrified of using a chainsaw as a guitar. Even during gameplay at the beginning of the song, Parappa still looks horrified by those scissors. Poor boy. So before we continue, in the middle of writing my script, I launched a brand new channel with the name Pinky Orange Stuff, where I will post whatever I feel like, but mostly I wanted to make just so I can post fan dubs, because recently I started voice-overing Parappa the Rapper anime episodes, and I really wanted to come up with a reason to voice over these episodes, not only for my personal interest. I will post other things in there too, so subscribe and stay tuned. And let's get back into the analysis. After the hostage situation, Parappa has to beat a rare video game so they can find a way to confront the noodles. But the thing I want to discuss is the fantasy sequence before the stage, because it's the first positive in this game and the first inspirational in this franchise. This scene with Parappa standing in the middle surrounded by all the masters in the game always hit me with how damn good it is. The way it's shot, the way Parappa is animated, the inner monologue, and most importantly how it's presented. Did you notice all the previous fantasy sequences were presented in a wacky way? Well, this one is a lot more serious and down to earth. This is one of the very few times in this franchise to slow things down and make it more grounded and inspirational. Nothing like this ever happened in the previous installments in the franchise, and yet it doesn't feel out of place. That isn't even the only thing that makes this scene so special. It's also because what Parappa has learned. He appreciates all of his masters equally instead of appreciating one more than the other, which is so sweet. But he thinks he's ready to grow up and start doing things on his own without relying on somebody else's help. It's weird to hear something like this out of a character whose job is to copy their instructors, but that just shows how much the dev team wanted to give a character like this depth. He may be a 2D rapping dog, but he's a 3-dimensional, well-grounded character. You don't see that much depth in a character from a wacky franchise and not a cinematic/realistic/dramatic franchise very often. So you can imagine how shocked I was to find out the thought that was put into the titular character all by myself. And that's why Sony should bring him back, because out of all their dead franchises, I miss this one the most. So yeah. After he beats the video game, it's time for the real thing. And by real thing, I mean an actual noodle world. I told you this game is a lot more better than the first one. A lot of people say they wish this part was playable. Well, I think it's better to leave it as a cutscene because it wouldn't be as epic as it is. This world doesn't do anything significant to Parappa's character. So I'll skip to Kuru Noodle's backstory. The entire story of this game happened because the main villain was forced to eat burgers by his deceased father, since he will be in charge of Beer Burger when he grows up. And he thought the solution to stop eating burgers is to force everybody to eat only noodles. And why am I explaining Kuru Noodle's backstory when this video is about Parappa's character? Well, remember the narration in the beginning of the game where Parappa was also forced to eat only noodles? He has every right to confront the Chinese guy, because he understands his backstory better than everyone else in the building. Before we move on, I just wanted to mention how weirdly relatable this story is to me. This didn't happen with a particular dish, but it did happen with 2 gaming franchises. So when I used to be a huge Splatoon fan, and I'm not exaggerating when I say huge, I genuinely wanted to see Splatoon everywhere and become a more popular series than Mario, because back then my parents were treating me like I was still a Mario fan, and I hated it. But now, as a Parappa fan, I'm sick of seeing Splatoon everywhere, and to not repeat this cycle, I decided to become a gaming channel. So anyways, this video isn't about me, so let's get back into Parappa 2. In this cutscene, instead of Parappa saying the iconic line, Kunu Noodles is dead. Aside from this just big subversive joke, I think this game is trying to say us that it's not always believing that the thing you want to happen, because even if you have never heard of the story before, you know that the villain isn't actually gonna win. It can also be about believing you can find a better alternative to your problems, because it's not about what you want out of life, it's about what you need. After the sick rap battle about foods, we get a cutscene where it shows the events of the game, but this time from Sunny's perspective with her song playing in the background. I definitely like this approach instead of making a subplot about her, since she isn't all that important to the story. Even though I have an issue with some of the scenes in this cutscene, I won't be talking about that since this video is already long enough and we aren't done yet. Not only with the story, so I will let it slide. Even if it doesn't seem to most players, Sunny actually holds accountable for her actions by trying her best to get Parappa's attention in order to apologize to him. She seems so happy when she sees his efforts to become a man. In the first game, she didn't recognize Parappa's accomplishments, but in this game, she finally redeemed. During the song montage, Parappa gives a replica of his hat to Kunu Noodles, passing his legacy to the next generation. Probably, I don't know, that's how I see it. And in return, he gives Parappa an invitation to perform at a concert. This scene is actually really cute. I love how Kuno Noodle basically became Parappa's biggest fan after he was inspired by him. Exactly what happened to me, funnily enough. And this next scene is actually my favorite cutscene in this entire franchise because of what it did to my life and me as a person, so buckle up for a long ass analysis of it. Before the concert is about to begin, Parappa tells Sonny he tried his best to become a real man, but in the process, he realized he didn't feel changed, so he will continue to do the things he's best at, like rapping. But Sonny, instead of actively saying I'm sorry, she says he's already a man because he didn't give up on his dreams and goals. Because being a man isn't a one specific thing. You can be a man and do a lot of things in your life. This is where his arc from the first game is finally completed, since from the very beginning he tried to change himself so he could appeal to Sonny, but the reason why he gets her in this game is because of who he really is, and that's why in the first game she didn't acknowledge his efforts. Well, this doesn't necessarily mean Sonny will stop making mistakes forever, but it means she will put effort into making them up. I don't think she is as greatly written as Parappa. In my opinion, he's the best written character in this series, but she's still kind of well written. And then, as the concert is about to begin, we get a shot of MC Kikokmoshi entering the stage from below, followed by Parappa, who bows to the crowd and everyone is cheering for him. I always loved this scene because it showed how far Parappa came, not only with his rapping career, but also as a person. With Sonny's song fading out, it's just peak storytelling. I wouldn't talk about the ending cutscenes where Parappa won another lifetime supply, but this time Big Cheese. Instead, I'm going to talk about how he was characterized during the gameplay of Parappa 2, not Parappa 1, because this video is already long enough, so yeah.
If you thought
So I'll skip talking about the first stage and talk about the romantic karate level. It's a perfect example of him copying what the instructors do because he thinks he will grow up in the process, hence why he gets way too much into it. As much as I love to joke about Parappa being bisexual, I think he wanted to literally kiss his hobby if he ever has an alone time with Sonny to know how to smooch her, and it's only practicing it with PJ. He's afraid that Chop Chop Master Roya through the TV will yell at him, "No, Guto! You, not romantic," and therefore won't understand adults. But hey, that's just a theory. A gay theory. I miss you, Bad Pat. Previously, when discussing Guru Ant, I said I was going to talk about the good and the cool endings, not the stage's premise. So here goes nothing. What will bring them up? Well, you see, when you beat the stage in good mode, Guru Ant says that Parappa is very mature, and Parappa, in a kind of sarcastic way, tells Guru he's still bigger than his usual size and Guru wants to be small again. He didn't try to mock him, he wanted to tell him the truth in a sarcastic manner. But the cool ending is totally different, and out of all cool endings in this game, this one is my favorite. Guru Ant, with approval and excitement, says Parappa has grown to be a young man. And he responds very selflessly that Guru has grown too, but he didn't say it in a sarcastic way this time, he said it with genuine care for him. Parappa is too wholesome for this world, oh my god. I heard a few people say Parappa only cares about Sonny, but that couldn't be further from the truth. And another instance where Parappa is very selfless is after beating stage 5 on good and Takoyama goes back to his normal form and he asks, who did all of this? Instead of Parappa showing off and proudly saying, I did it, he says that Takoyama did it because he told him to. He never wants to take away anybody's credit, even if he did most of the work. And it's so damn cute. This definitely shows how he isn't anything like Jochin and how Sonny definitely should go with Parappa. Damn! It took us years to get into the conclusion, lol, but that just shows how much I am passionate about this series, even if I recently became a fan of it. As much as I want a third game in the Parappa franchise, or like fourth, I don't know, I'm still happy that this franchise even exists. So, I want you to rewind a bit, because in the very beginning of this video, I told you to remember that I said my last video about a single gaming franchise was when I talked about my history with Splatoon. Well, not only does that show how rarely I get invested in the media, but also how Parappa basically replaced Splatoon in my heart, even if Splatoon is the more recent franchise. Let's return to Parappa though. Now let's discuss another thing about his character that I neglected to mention for a long time. Rapping. He basically repeats his instructors, and when he spits his own bars, he isn't usually the best at it, and yet he didn't give up on his passion. This character is very connected to 90s hip-hop culture, and if you want to learn more about it, watch Who Dat Character Parappa video by DG, because I think I said enough about his character. So yeah, that's the end of the video. This stupidly long video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and go check my second channel out for extra content. Anyways, see ya!